Okay, what's going on YouTube? It's Alvin the Director. I'm back again with another video. I want to go ahead and apologize in advance if the audio sounds bad because I had to take my Rode mic completely off my camera. I don't know what was going on with it, but it just like stopped working. Sometimes it would record, sometimes it wouldn't, or the sound would sound muffled. So I just took it off completely. So I'm in the process of ordering another one. So just bear with me in the next couple videos. As you all know, a little bit over a month ago, I drove from Georgia, Fort Gordon, all the way to North Pole, Alaska. And the trip took about 2.5, 3 weeks-ish. And I posted that video on YouTube and I got a lot of love on it. And the entire trip was just like, it was incredible. We had a couple hiccups on the way, like we got stuck in Juneau. However, you know, I'm here now, made it, and so everything's great. One of the questions that I got, well actually I got a lot of questions about how I plan the drive from Georgia to Alaska, because that's not an easy trip. It's not like you're moving a couple hours away. You're literally picking up and moving, you know, 3,400 miles away on the other side of like the globe. So there was a lot of planning that went into driving to North Pole, Alaska, and I'm gonna break everything down for you. All right, so I made a note on my phone and I labeled it the Alaska road trip. If you have an iPhone, you can easily make notes on your phone. I'm pretty sure you know how to do that. For Android users, I don't know what you have. I'm pretty sure you have something similar to this. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a document that I could pretty much track everything on. And so the first thing on my list was, of course, thinking about how I wanted to get from point A to point B and what challenges I may face along the road. So Canada and Alaska, the climate is completely different than the lower 48 in the United States. So I pulled up several road conditions maps, and so I'll post that in the description below so you can check out the road conditions, because that was essential in me driving and planning my route on whether or not I could drive at all, or if I just had to suck it up and just fly and then, you know, pay to ship my car up later on. So luckily, I've been monitoring, you know, the entire drive and monitoring the roads, and the roads are completely clear. Well, for the most part, clear throughout the whole like planning phase. So like I knew for a fact, like if anything were to change or if the road conditions got too extreme, then, you know, I wouldn't even be able to make the drive. So that was number one. You have to monitor the road conditions, especially when you're going through territory that is unknown. All right, now my truck. So me and Raven, we got a truck last year, 2019 Chevy Colorado Z71. It's my baby, my pride and joy. And I knew I was gonna have to do several things with it before moving to Alaska. One of those things was getting snow tires. Living in Georgia, you don't have a need for snow tires. If you have snow tires in Georgia, I mean, it's a waste of money unless you think they look cool or whatever, but I mean, they really don't. So I had to get some good snow tires. So I was able to throw some snow tires on there. I scheduled my snow tire appointment in Bellingham, Washington. The reason being is because really I kind of gambled. I knew I was leaving in January, and I was trying to avoid snow as much as I can. And I figured that I could make it to Bellingham before actually needing to put on tires, especially since I had a brand new truck anyways, and my tires were perfectly fine. So I scheduled my appointment with the Chevrolet in Bellingham. You know, I gave them a call, I told them what I was doing. I said, hey, I don't know anything about snow tires. How can you help me? So if you're going to up north or going to Alaska and you don't know about snow conditions and you don't know about snow tires and stuff like that, give your automotive shop a call and ask them. Now I do recommend you calling an automotive store somewhere where they get a lot of snow. That way they can actually educate you on the snow tires, because if you ask someone in Georgia about snow tires and they've never really lived up north, they could be selling you a crappy product. So that's why I plan, you know, to schedule my appointment in Bellingham. Now with this, I did drive through several passes in the Pacific Northwest where snow tires or snow chains were required, or if you had all-wheel drive, that was also acceptable. However, those blinking lights weren't on during the time that I was passing through. However, if I would have came a day early, or if I would have passed through there a day late, then I would have been screwed, because I wouldn't have been able to go through the passage just because I didn't have the correct tires and I didn't have snow chains at the time. So that's also something to think about. I gambled and I made it through. I left in the middle of January, but I don't really recommend it. So right before you get to a snowy area, if you don't have those winter tires on, go ahead and get them. Or you can call whatever automotive shop that you want to call up north and ask them what tires they usually put on their vehicles, and maybe you can have them shipped to your local tire store, wherever you live at, and you know, it'll save you some time as well. All right, so the next thing I wanted to do was plan my route. Now, I planned on splitting the drive up in 4 days from Georgia to Washington. I planned on driving about 12 hours or so per day, okay? So originally I planned on driving from Grovetown, Georgia to Kansas City, Missouri, which was 13 and a half hours. Then from Kansas City, Missouri to Rock Springs, Wyoming, that was 12 and a half hours. Then from Rock Springs, Wyoming to Yakima, I hope I said that right, Washington, which is 12 hours. And then the last day driving from Yakima, Washington to Bellingham, Washington, which is 3.5 hours. So that last day I would only have 3.5 hours. However, once I started driving, I quickly realized, especially like the first couple of days, I was just so pumped and so motivated to keep driving that I just booked it, you know? So I ended up driving to Fort Riley, Kansas on my first night. And I think that was maybe around 15 hours or so that I drove. And, you know, the only thing I did was really stop, you know, to get something to eat, stopped at rest areas, fueled up, and, you know, I just kept on trucking it. So that's always something to think about. Since I did it solo, it wasn't as bad of me, you know, driving a little bit further each day, because I didn't have to stop for anyone else, you know, wanting to use the bathroom, or someone else needing to get something to eat, or I didn't have any pets or anything like that. I don't have pets, so I didn't have to stop, you know, for my pets to use the bathroom, or for them to get exercise, or whatever pets need. Okay, so the second day I ended up driving from Fort Riley, Kansas. I still drove a little bit further, and I spent the night in Ogden, Utah. So that was day 2. And then the final day, like, I woke up pretty early. I think it was maybe 5:30 or 6 a.m. And, you know, I just decided that morning, hey, like, I want to get to Bellingham. I can do it, you know? So I ended up making the drive in only 3 days. And also, when it comes to planning the route, I would say consider the hotels that you're gonna stay in. If you know for a fact that you have certain stops where you're, like, if you know for a fact you're going to drive 12 hours, and like that's it, you can go ahead and book your hotel reservations. I didn't do this because I, you know, had a feeling that I'd be, you know, pumped and I'd want to drive a little bit further, so I didn't make any hotel reservations. However, I did, you know, before I decided, once I got to like Kansas City, I did look ahead to like my next stopping point, which is going to be Fort Riley, Kansas, just to verify that they did have rooms available. So I didn't want to drive 2 hours and then, you know, be shit out of luck because I didn't, you know, properly plan. I didn't call ahead. So I did that. They said they had plenty of rooms available, and I did that for each stop. So I would, you know, call about 4 hours out, and I would say, hey, you know, what is the room situation looking like? And that way you can kind of plan on where you want to stay at. You can also use the Expedia app. It will typically be right. I never had any issues with Expedia. So that's how I kind of, you know, booked everything. I called ahead and then I booked through that app. So that helped out, you know, a lot as well. And then, you know, people have different standards of the type of hotels they want to stay in. For me, since I was driving through unfamiliar territory, I just used brands that I knew for a fact had good hotels. So IHG, which was on post at Fort Riley, they always have, you know, pretty good hotels. I did Holiday Inn Express in Ogden, Utah, because I've always had, you know, a great experience with Holiday Inn. And then in Bellingham, I also stayed in Holiday Inn Express until, you know, the ferry. I also made on my notes, and this is completely optional, some things that I figured that I would need to purchase like ASAP whenever I got to Alaska. And like some of those things were like a TV, because like me, like I want to have a TV to watch, which again, not a necessity because I have my laptop and everything, but that's something to consider. A trash can, you need a trash can in your home. I put, you know, a small Phillips screwdriver. I didn't bring my toolkit with me, which I should have brought, but I knew that if I was getting a TV, I would need to have like some kind of screwdriver to like, you know, put the TV together. And then like a dresser, of course. So my household goods are actually coming completely this summer whenever Raven moves up here, because she's finishing up her school year. She's teaching right now. So I just got like the bare necessities that I would need once I got here. And so, you know, I just made a list of things that I figured I would need, you know, in the meantime. Okay, so I also put on my notes, I put like the snow tire appointment, like the reminder and everything on here. So if there were any issues, I could go ahead and, you know, call them and everything like that. Okay, so this is very important. If you're driving to North Pole and you're going through Canada, you need to call ahead and find out if the gas stations are open. So there are a lot of gas stations, there are a lot of hotels that are seasonal. Me driving in the winter, I knew that like I had to have those gas stations open in order for me to make it. Now I did pack gas cans in the back of my truck. I had 3 of them. It was overkill, but like I couldn't see myself getting stuck in like the middle of the wild because, you know, Canada and Alaska, it's the wilderness, very, very remote. So I couldn't see myself just getting stranded because I didn't have gas and I didn't plan properly, and then me being screwed, freezing to death, or I don't know, getting mauled by a bear or something. Who knows? You know, I overplanned. So you don't have to do that, but I would say call ahead and find out what service stations are available on your route, as well as the hotels. So the ferry went from Haines, Alaska, or from Bellingham, Washington to Haines, Alaska. So that's where, you know, I was gonna pick up my drive again and drive from Haines on into Fairbanks and North Pole area. But I knew for a fact that since I was limited on light, that I would only be driving in the daytime. So I drove about 4.5 hours on day one. Once I got to Alaska, drove through Canada, because you have to drive through Canada and then pop back out of Canada to get back into Alaska because of like the mountains and everything and how Alaska's shaped. So I ended up staying in Destruction Bay, and it was nice. The hotel was very nice. The staff was great, and I got there. They had like a restaurant connected to the inn, and I'll post. I don't know the inn's name, but I'll post it in the description below. And you'll be able to, like, I don't know, they have like a gift shop. They have food and all that stuff. So, you know, it's pretty nice being able to stay there. This is very, very important. So I decided that I wanted to take the ferry because of the experience, and I didn't want to put as many miles on my truck, even though I had a new truck. I think I left and it had maybe 11,000 miles on it, maybe 12,000. And so I knew for a fact I could drive all the way through Canada, but I didn't know what the road conditions were gonna be like, and I didn't want to put as many miles on, you know, on my truck if I didn't have to do that. So what I did was end up taking the ferry from Bellingham, Washington to Haines, Alaska. Now, with the ferry, we did have an unfortunate situation where the ferry actually broke down, and we were stranded in Juneau for about 2 weeks because they were trying to order parts, and like it was just a whole bunch of like just chaos and confusion. But I'm not gonna go into that because I already made a video on it, so you can check that out on your own. You know, why I was stuck on that ferry. But you know, we ended up getting to Haines, Alaska after about 2 weeks. So from Haines, we had to wait for our vehicles to get shipped on a separate barge to Haines, Alaska. So that took another like 3 days. And then from there, I drove from Haines, Alaska to Destruction Bay, and from Destruction Bay to North Pole, Alaska. I met some people on the ferry who I ended up, you know, kind of convoying with. There was a convoy of about 5 vehicles, which helped out a lot. We all had like, you know, handheld radios, which is also a good thing. So if you're like taking 2 cars or more, I do recommend bringing some handheld radios because you're not gonna have any service out there in the wild. And, you know, it's good to like, you know, kind of check in. Everyone, you know, was, you know, squared away. And like we didn't have any issues or anything like that, but you know, just as far as like emergency purposes, we did have a couple of moose that ran out in front of the cars. We had a fox that ran across the cars, you know, on the highway, and you know, if you were to hit that, then you know you could be out of luck. So just having that radio as a safety precaution was extremely important. Now, speaking of wildlife, this is why I recommend you driving in the daytime only, especially going through Canada and Alaska. The time or the amount of daylight in the winter can be slim to none. So we wanted to take advantage of the amount of sunlight that we had. And again, we had wildlife that we could have easily hit. So if you're driving at nighttime, it's a lot harder to see that, you know? And you know, you also have to take in consideration like the snow and all that other stuff. So you have to truly be cognizant of your surroundings at all times. And that's honestly why I recommend you driving, you know, in the daytime. In the summertime, it's gonna be, you know, light, you know, pretty much all day long. Even at midnight, it's gonna be pretty light outside. So you probably won't have any issues then, except, you know, trying to make sure you have enough rest. But that's definitely something you want to think about, especially driving, you know, in the wintertime. And, you know, that's pretty much it. So I ended up arriving to North Pole on February 13th, which was the day before Valentine's Day, and I left on January 17th, which was Raven's birthday. So that took about a month, you know. And, you know, it probably would have took about a week and a half, maybe a little bit less than 2 weeks if we didn't have that unfortunate incident where we were stuck on the ferry. And, you know, besides that, like the drive itself was great, and it was an experience that, you know, I I truly cherish. I was able to see a lot of things that I've never seen, in my life, and it was a lot of fun. So if you have any questions about the drive, and if you have any questions about just moving with the military in general and why I planned out the route the way that I did, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want more explanations on any of the other videos that I have, also let me know in the comments. And of course, you can always follow me on Instagram at AlvinTheDirector. And I try to get back to everyone's DMs as best as I can, as fast as I can. Because again, if you DM me, I want to give you the courtesy of you getting that response, to answer those questions. So whatever you have. I'm Alvin the Director, and I'm out. See you in the next episode.